mats. If you face towards this side of the room, you get to see all the Buddhist stuff. Tadasana. Toes spread, feet touching if possible. Obviously, if your thighs meet before your feet, because we all have different shaped legs, then don't bring your feet together. But do make sure that they're level, one way or the other. That you don't have one out and one in or anything like that. The arms are by your sides. Your head is upright and comfortable and relaxed. So we don't want to be like we're standing to attention for a sergeant major or something like that. It's very relaxed. It's just like a sort of coming into presence, coming into your body. I quite like to start the whole thing with my feet. I often move my feet because the plantar fascia on the soles of the feet it affects the tissue all the way up the back of the legs. So by moving my feet, I'm moving the tissue all the way up the back of the legs. And by moving the tissue, it begins to hydrate. So starting with the feet, massaging your way up. I move my feet side to side, but I've noticed in my surveys of this kind of thing, many people like to move their feet front to back. Whichever works for you is fine. The head is up, crown of the head as if you're being drawn up by a thread, silver thread, golden thread, whatever color thread you want. And your chest muscles just soften a little bit over time and through breath, and understanding that softening of the body is also necessarily a softening of the mind. Because we have a belief that there's a fixed, autonomous, discrete version of ourselves, we often experience tension to do with reaching back to the imagined past or reaching out to the imagined future. So release your chest, and some of that tension releases. Begin to let your arms drift further from your body and turn your palms out and up, and then raising the arms as you come up, lightly tone your tummy, that is to say, draw your tummy in and up. And the pelvic floor, which is between the pubic bone and tailbone, and it's not just between the pubic bone and tailbone, it includes, in a sensory way, the pubic bone and the tailbone. The pelvic floor is nudged. It's kind of got a little encouragement for energy to go up from there and to stay, therefore, in the central channel. So a channel we imagine in the middle of the body, running all the way along in front of the spinal column. And we're just nudging energy into that, or presence or awareness. Some traditions call that presence or awareness Kundalini. Others call it Chandalini. Others call it Tejas. So it's different words, same thing. Take a big circle to release and hands to your heart. And then deep breaths. So arriving in the body doesn't mean being like a statue. It means being explorative, like relaxed. Not feeling like you're here to, sort of obey, but instead to investigate. And you're investigating reality as it actually is rather than what we think it is. Now we're going to bring our left arm up and our right arm by the side of the body. The tummy should draw in and up as you go up and over. So the more you go over, the more the tummy gently goes in and up. And if you can feel your pelvic floor again, it's nothing sort of overly mechanical. It's more just like a sort of spacious buoyancy, an upward buoyancy. Coming out when you're ready. Raise the other arm similarly. Lightly tone the tummy. Feel that buoyancy. The more you go over, the more it's good just to feel a support from the pelvic floor area. Again, it's not a sort of gripping. It's not something that's done by a person doing something, one thing, construct, solid thing, doing another thing. It's much more like a gentle meditation and an appreciation of our own interconnection. We could call that our humanity, I guess. Inhale, come on up. Hands back to the heart center. Take 2, 3, 4 or more deep breaths. And step your feet hip width apart. Have a look down at your feet and make sure that they are parallel to each other, as if you're standing on parallel lines, not the Blondie album, but literally parallel lines. You shouldn't stand on the Blondie album. It's a very good album and it shouldn't be trodden on. Raise your arms up, lightly tone the tummy. It features such hit tracks as Atomic, which is one of my favorites. And what's that one about hanging on the telephone? That one. Okay, bend your ankles, knees, and hips and come forwards. Breathe easy. We're going to see if we can reach for the floor through bending and bending and bending the knees and the hips. And of course, we're going to feel pretty good stretch on the back, and it can be very, very helpful to bounce the pelvis or to sway the pelvis, just to get a bit of movement there, which is connected to the breath. I guess the most basic fundamental thing we're coming to understand is that everything is everything, and that there isn't, a separate personality from everything else. So when something happens, if you get in a good mood or a bad mood, or sometimes we can praise or recriminate ourselves to kingdom come. But actually everything, everything's causal, everything's connected to everything else. Now raise the arms up behind you like you're skiing and then sweep them forwards and up. Keep the knees bent, but play with it. Make sure you feel loose in the neck and loose wherever you need to. You can move side to side. You can bend if you want. Elbows, you can, anything that makes you feel like you can cope with the moment. And then inhaling to come all the way up. Big wide circle, hands on your hips. And take some deep breaths like that. So we're standing in a very sort of positive position, isn't it? Most of us don't sort of stand like this. We're more we try and intimate humbleness with our physical posture for various reasons. We don't want to be noticed for various reasons. But here, the posture is very, very open. Hands on the hips, so the chest is wide. Not only does that widen the chest, but pressing down lifts your chest and lifts your rib cage. So this is a very, very present. We imagine we can hide, but of course, we're always present. So we need to now look at the inner life and the outer life. In other words, how we feel habitually in our nerves compared to how this posture feels. And we want to see if we can match the inner to the outer, occupying gradually the body and thereby letting go of habit patterns. I'm not saying that confident and positive is better than humble and meek. I'm saying any fixed polarity makes it very, very difficult for us to flow. So in yoga, we're just trying to move between polarities. We're going to step even wider. And we're going to come to Tara-asana. I believe, if my suspicions are correct, that Tara is currently on the shrine behind me. Yes, she is. And it's going to stretch the arms out. So this is Tara-asana. Tara, of course, is the name of a bodhisattva. I guess you could call her a goddess. And she's the goddess of compassion, but it also means star. So that's what you're like now, like a beautiful morning star, perhaps twinkling a little bit with your twinkly fingers. You can twinkle a bit if you want. Quite nice to twinkle like a little star. And then in that star modality, we're simply going to lean over, no change of the legs, and breathe easy. And of course, this is what Trikonasana was like originally until Krishnamacharya innovated turning the front leg out. And then we're going to go the other way, similarly. So Krishnamacharya innovated turning the front leg out, and BKS Iyengar innovated turning the back toes in. Before that, Trikonasana was like this. Okay, coming back up, hands on the hips, back toes turn in, front foot and leg turns out on the ball of the foot, finishing off on the heel. And of course, we just check to make sure we have heel to arch and definitely not heel to heel. That's the one taboo. Heel to heel is a taboo. Heel to arch, no problem. Heel to toe, absolutely tickety-boo. But heel to heel. Stretch your arms. Inhale, exhale. So trikona, in Sanskrit, three corners. Trikorna is Irish for three corners. Same thing, right? So breathe through your nose. Relax if you want. It's advised in the Yoga Sutras to relax. Feel between your arms, on the back of your body, a gentle stretch that's related to your breath releasing. Between your arms, on the back of the body, a gentle stretch in two directions out from the center. Inhale, very calm. Hands on the hips while you turn your feet forwards. Again, a sort of dynamic, positive position. And it's just good to notice, if there's a sort of shrinking violet, so that there's a kind of retracted part of your experience compared to this positive position. And just so we're getting some flexibility over our inner life. We occupy this pose, we become more present. Back toes in, front foot and leg out. If you turn on the ball of the foot first, and then only finish the turn on the heel once the heel lines up with the arch, theoretically you can't go wrong, according to my calculations. The instep of your front foot parallel to the front of the mat. The stride is generous. The back toes, as mentioned, innovated by BKS Iyengar, who died only about 2016, I think. I don't know, can't remember. Anyway, not long ago. Stretch your arms, inhale, exhale, come down. Breathe through your nose with your jaw soft and eyes relaxed. So deep, natural breaths. Again, take your attention to the back of your body, in between the shoulder blades, and imagine a release that's connected to a release of your breath in two directions. That's connected to a release of your breath. That's an important caveat. Two directions. Very good. Okay, come on up when you're ready. Turn the feet forwards, hands to the hips, deep, natural breaths. Locate your hip joint. So if you were at the Rocky Horror Picture Show watching that marvelous musical and someone said put your hands on your hips, you'd put your hands here, I'm sure, and you'd bend your knees in tight and all the rest of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I hope you know what I'm talking about. It's marvelous. But here, no. Here we're bringing the hands lower to the hip joints, which when you move side to side, you can feel there's articulation there at the hip joint. So there's hands on the hips, but here's hip joints. And it's from here that we're going to see if we can stretch each arm up from that very top of the outer thighs. And for me, that takes concentration and discipline and repetition. I have to keep bringing my attention back, calling my attention back, because the mind sometimes just makes an arbitrary, it just sort of says that we're doing something when we're actually really not. So we have to practice this honesty, it's called in Sanskrit satya, from the root sat, which means it is. Okay, turn your back toes in, front foot and leg out, whole body's turning that way. Turn your whole body round. And as you turn your whole body round, walk your front foot further across the width of the mat, away from me. So you go a bit wider in the direction you're facing. And then you lift your back heel, turn it out, and then bring it down again. So you're doing your best to square up in this new direction. In this alignment, it's not heel to arch. It can be heel to heel, but for most people, that's too narrow. It can be up to hip width. For me, it's something between the two. Inhale from your inner back groin, exhale, bend your knee, your front knee. This is Virabhadrasana. Vira, hero. It's cognate with the English word viral, actually, Vira. And Bhadra means good. Play with it in your own way, especially focusing on the stretch from the top of your inner thigh on the back leg. The top of your inner thigh on the back leg. And you can feel that stretch goes across the lateral outer pubis. And it goes after that back underneath your belly muscles. The same muscles, one muscle. So keep playing with it, adjusting it so you're getting more and more focused. The tummy's toned, the shoulders you extend through. Inhale, coming up. Turn back to the front, and then hands on hips while you turn all the way around the other way, walking your front foot further across the width of the mat, lifting your back heel up, turning it, squaring up. Very good, very good. And then breathe through your nose. Again, light tone on your tummy, so it's just drawn gently back in and up. And then raise your arms from your hip joints, top of the outer thighs, beautiful. Make sure the roots of the neck are soft. And again, let's focus on the inner groin of the back leg, the very top of the inner thigh. As we inhale, raise from the hip joints. Exhale, bend the front knee. And so you might find utilizing movements of your feet helpful, such as lifting one or the other or both heels. Useful in bringing that relatively tight tissue of the inner groin round so that it twists round and then releases up. And remember that stretches and strengthenings in yoga are not the yoga, but giving to the rich experiences that we find therein is yoga. This is the beautiful Virabhadrasana. So keep playing with it. Don't hold it like a posture. Try and find ways to become more fully integrated. Get all the tissue that you can to come more and more on board. Great. Inhaling to come up, turn back to the front, make a big circle with your arms, hands on your hips, 2 or 3 or 4 deep breaths, perhaps a bit of movement of your pelvis to loosen your back. So that could be side to side or backwards or forwards. It's just loosening your back in your own way. Having done so, we're going to walk our feet together because using a block is going to be useful for what we're going to do next. Brick block if you got it, but regular blocks are okay as well. You can have it 1, 2, or 3 different heights, depending on how long your legs are, how long your arms are, and how flexible your hamstrings are. So if you're not sure, take it at its highest height, and you can always lower it. The hands are on the hips, the brick's right in the middle of our stride. And it's a generous stride. The name of this is prasrita, which means spread out, implying spread out wide. So you can see the distance I've gone for here, being a man of enormous stature, 5'9½". Used to be 5'9½", but things have changed. Extend your little toes. We all get shorter, don't we, as time goes by, unfortunately. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, fold. And left hand on the block. Again, you can have, whatever height. And if it's difficult for your wrists, for whatever reason, you can be on fingertips or even knuckles. And then push down. The other hand goes on the pelvis, just above your tailbone. And breathe through your nose. So you're turning. Now, if you bend your bottom elbow just a tiny bit and take a couple of breaths, when you re-extend it, imagine a pulling down from the shoulder blade. Imagine there's a pulling down that's connected to you re-straightening the arm. Make sure the breath is flowing. That's an important caveat. So we're activating the long head of the tricep. Of course, it's fine also not to use a block at all if you've got very open hamstrings and very short legs and very long arms. But we do want to keep open in the front of the spine. Swap hands on the block, or if you're not using the block, the floor. And breathe through your nose, your other hand on your sacrum. Make sure your toes turn in towards each other, just a little bit. Very good. And then again, bend your bottom elbow. Keep breathing deep. And then as you re-straighten, feel a pull down from shoulder blade to a point just below the elbow. What's great about yoga poses is the potential areas to engage with are infinite. And mathematics says, or math says, that if the finite meets the infinite, it renders the finite to zero, meaning that when this sense of me, myself, and I, which we presume is finite, limited, meets a sense of the infinite, we'd sort of disappear, it just completely absorbs. Just in the same way that the planet Earth, if you zoom out far enough, disappears. And in the vastness of space, it's like it's gone. Okay. Releasing, so both hands come down. You can turn the block the other way if you find that useful. And breathe easy. Personally, I find it quite useful to do things like raise my heels and toes alternately, but I'm using the action. It's not just that doing that is inherently useful. But it might not be useful for you. I use it to stretch out various tissues. I use it to balance my ankles. I use it to tune in on balance in my feet and therefore tune out of this crazy habit of self. It is so addictive. So, what was meant by that is making a self out of things that are actually codependent. Coming up as high as you can on your fingertips and leaving the block where it is. Lead with your chest and come up. Bring your energy down to your feet and walk your feet towards each other. Coming down, let's make life a little bit more comfortable. We're going to put a blanket down. And that blanket should be folded in such a way that you can sit on it cross-legged and it accommodates you fully. We're going to use a block in front of us too, just like that. And the cross-leg position should be big enough to put said block in between the legs in this way, so that that's the size of the gap should be at least big enough for the block like that. And then once you've got your cross-leg position with the space for the block, you lean forwards to the block and notice if there's any stretch in the hips or the connective tissue on the outer leg. And then you breathe into it. So, of course, what makes yoga yoga is not the postures, because most of them have been invented recently. It's not doing what you're told, because that's the army. It's feeling sensations and giving to them so that they become like a doorway to move you from one experience where things seem finite, like good or bad. If you do something you're embarrassed about it, the finite mind either says, well, I'm bad, or sometimes we blame the other person, say they're bad. But actually reality is all of the factors impinging on it, on everything in that moment, makes that moment. And of course, without this sort of the inherent sense of self, then blame can't exist. You know, we can't put the blame on this group of people or that group of people, which of course historically has been the cause of all the wars. If through time and maybe massaging, things loosen up a bit in the breath, and it feels like, you know, you want to take the block lower, you can. You don't have to, but you can if it feels good. It's not the goal. I've never read a yoga text that ever says, you know, the great yogin lowers her block lower than anyone else's block. You know, what yoga texts say is that the interdependent experience, when opened up to, is liberative for the being that's caught up in this endless cycle of action and reaction called samsara. So you go to where you go to, and it might be different every day. With the block high, the block low. Some people end up even using the block for their head. It's not, again, I want to remind us that the goal is absorption, and the goal has nothing to do with how low the block is at all. And so we might find ourselves in a variety of different placements, on the block high with the hands on the block low with the block low and the head on the block. And of course, some people not using the block at all. And none of these are better than any other. Well, it's not quite true. Find the one that's best for you. The best one for you is the one that's causing your breath to release. That might be higher up, it might be lower down. This is why I always say yoga is all about the breath. Coming back up calmly in your own time and taking a breath or two. We're going to lift the spine and we're going to turn with the right hand on the floor behind us and the left hand crosses over both legs. We don't overturn. Overturning means that we're pulling up the leg, either by yanking with the hand or by tensing up the inner thigh. So we don't overturn. It's really nice to feel the spinal column. Really nice to feel the spinal column. And for me, that's, that takes time. I have to tune out of all the mental noise that the mind creates or co-creates. Okay, lift and turn the other direction, obviously. Bless you. Bless you again. And again, relax the legs so that they're not tense, they're not lifting. And again, tune in on the spine with great deal of honesty, which is difficult because of all the noise the mind makes. It's very, very hard at first to know what is honest, what is the way things are, because the mind is so full. So we have to let the mind empty. And the mind, emptying the mind isn't something you should fill your mind with, the idea of emptying the mind, but emptying the mind takes place spontaneously when you start taking an interest, when you open up to, when you start giving to the rich sensations of the moment, like any tension in the buttocks or hips or spine. Return to center, as Elvis Presley nearly said once, and then we'll change across. It was return to center, of course. We change across the legs, and there's that same gap. And then you're drawing the buttock flesh out and back. And then we can start with the block when it's highest setting, and that might be how we start and finish. And then it's a meditation. The only purpose of the poses is to act as a way through to an experience of interdependence, a direct experience. Because, of course, if you read any books about, biology or physics, or if you read books about trees, or you read books about mushrooms or fungus, you're gonna be. It's going to be affirmed that everything's interdependent. There's lots of great books like The Self-Delusion. That's a good one. There's books about the secret life of trees. I've been bought, but I've never read. But I like the idea of it. Trees being interdependent, with their roots exchanging nutrients via the mycelium through the ground. Very, very cool. So that we can think about interdependence, and that's nice and good, but we want to directly experience it in yoga. So you do that by setting up a rich experience, breathing into it, opening to it, giving to it. And then it acts as a doorway, a portal. And you're suddenly through in all of this richness. It's like the present moment. It's like the fizzing bubbles of a Barocca capsule, or any other dissolvable vitamin or medicine or whatever, those bubbling, fizzing. It's sort of rich like that. Each moment is like a bubble that arises and passes, but there's loads of elements to each moment. So it's multiple bubbles. That's why I compare it to, a Barocca, which just happens to be a particular make of vitamin capsule. I'm not sponsored by them, but I'd be up for it if it would help me with the mortgage. So again, for some, the head comes to the block. For some, the hand. It's not a good choice to come to a position that's not stimulating your breath. So sometimes it means you're not going far enough, and the breath isn't being challenged to release. Sometimes you're going too far, and the breath can't release because it's sort of squashed under the weight of the intensity of the pose. Good job. Coming up calmly, sitting up buoyantly, breathing naturally, settling the shoulders and the seat. Settling your seat means arriving. Most of us have, for good reason, a variety of trust issues, psychologists might say. I think we could say that of anybody, that there are trust issues. That is to say, we've found it difficult to trust particular things. We've invested in the past in this person or that thing or this religion or that event, and then, you know, we've been disappointed. But that's not so much the problem of the particular thing, although, you know, there may be valid reasons why there are trust issues, but it's the issue to do with trusting something in particular. If you fully invest in anything in particular, particularities are just bubbles in the fizzing. What we're encouraged in yoga to trust in is the whole, the all of it, not a particular religion or a particular, you know, holy or anything at all, a particular belief, but all of this, you know, just as it is, you know, and then you're awake. We're not awake when we're just gripping and grasping a value or a belief up above and beyond the reality in front of our faces. Inhale when you're ready. Exhale, we're turning again like we did before. We're twisting again like we did last summer. And balancing the spine. Breathing natural. Sometimes to feel your spine, you might have to rock a little to just kind of ascertain how it feels and begin the process of natural balance. Natural balance. Of course, the body-mind is a process that depends on homeostasis. So it depends on everything being, you know, working in codependence with everything else. And if you take an element away or several elements away, the whole thing can temporarily collapse. Sometimes we call that a breakdown, don't we? We give it a label. And then, you know, homeostasis is restored under new circumstances. So in a sense, that's what we want to feel, is that balance spinally. And then we're going to release and keep releasing around to the other side. Same sort of thing. Breathing through your nose if you can. Jaw soft. And again, tune in on the spine as you find it. Without holding the breath. Between the left and right. So it's the challenge is to be awake to the moment. And that requires letting go of attachments, which I used to always find it challenging when people used to say in yoga circles or Buddhist circles, you should let go of attachments. I used to find that very confusing. It's like, what? You know, don't regularly phone my elderly mum. I'm attached to doing that because, you know, her husband died, my dad died. So that's an attachment. Or, you know, don't look after my kids. But that's not what non-attachment means at all. It means not being attached to particular views in a sort of dogmatic way, but to open up, to let go constantly, every day. Okay, return to center. We're going to stretch out our legs, and perhaps we'll do that along the length of the blanket, and perhaps we'll use, I don't know why I'm perhapsing, we'll use a belt, there's no perhaps about it, and we might sit on a block as well. The circumstance under which we would decide to sit on a block would be after drawing the buttock flesh out and back, if we found that the pelvis was collapsing backwards like that, then a block is a really useful way of getting it to tip up and therefore restoring our lumbar curve, which we very much want to do. We want to restore our lumbar curve. We want it a gentle inward curve. So that means, I would say, for most people sitting on a block is going to be the best option, so that we don't have a lumbar convex, but we have a lumbar concave. We want it to be concave. Having sat on the block or whatever we're using, then we're going to bring the strap around the feet. And simply pulling on the strap, looking for lightness in the lumbar. I'm sure you know, but just in case, to be clear, the lumbar are the 5 bones beneath the ribs and above the pelvis, and they're the largest bones of your spinal column. They're very large. So those 5 bones, we want to feel them, we want to balance them, we want to lift them, and we want that to feel light, both mentally and physically. I find if I move side to side, I can contribute to the lightness by massaging some of the tightness that would otherwise make the pose feel more heavy. So we want lightness. Also, spread your feet from big toe side to little toe side. Spread them sort of outwardly. Keep your head upright, like it was when we're in our mountain pose at the beginning. Use any movement that helps you stay in a flowing state, which incidentally, flowing is the positive way of saying non-attachment, right? Flowing. Keep the breath flowing, keep the body flowing. Look for lovely lift, lovely space. Great, okay. Release the strap. We're going to do the same thing without the strap. So we're going to bring our hands next to the hips. And in this way, we can stretch the chest. Lift the head up, depending on the length of your arms. If you've got longer arms, you might need to bend your elbows a little bit to point them backwards. If you've got shorter arms, you might need to really stretch them down and maybe just come to the fingertips. And if you've got sort of Goldilocks arms in the middle, then the shoulders will be down and the hands will be flat. So any of those works very, very well. And then we're looking for lightness and lift with a bit of movement. So I call this ranging around, seeing if you can find opportunities just to go a little lighter in the back in a way that we could describe as holistic. A little lighter. In addition, not instead of, but in addition to this ranging around, see if you can very gently allow your feet to broaden, just like a soft smile. If someone, I don't know if you're a meditator, but sometimes when people meditate, when you get absorbed, a soft smile comes across one's face, which is why the Buddha should be, in good iconography, always represented as having a soft smile, which he does in this picture here. Well done, everyone. Gently release from that pose. And we're going to come off the blanket. We're going to fold the blanket partially over, about a third of it folded over. And that will make it easier to then roll it up into a veritable saucisson, a blue sausage. Not the kind of sausage you want to put in your sandwich, I don't think. But a sausage it is. Once you've got that sausage in position, as it were, you're going to use it for your hands. So your fingers are going to come over the front edge of it, like this. Maybe I'll take my cardigan off so you can see. I do love a cardigan. So the fingers coming over the edge like that. The legs bent to about 90 degrees. You can see my hands are behind my bottom. And then tone your tummy. So you draw it in and up, and then lift your bum. And then travel forwards, and if you can, up and over. So the chest is sort of, I'm going to say, barreled over, using the term barreled, meaning, well, it's rolling. So someone delivering beer to a pub might roll the barrels. Cockneys like to roll out the barrel so that they can have a barrel of fun, apparently, according to the song. My great granddad Jim was a Cockney, apparently, born within the sound of Bow Bells. Okay, well done. Quite full on, isn't it? Come down calmly. And from the sublime to the more comfortable, we're going to lay down on that blanket with it running along the bottom edge of the shoulder blades so that it tilts your chest and lifts your breastbone. Now, at the bottom of the breastbone is a cartilaginous portion of the breastbone. So everyone knows where the breastbone is, right? It's the breastbone. The top part of the breastbone is a smaller section called the manubrium, and that's attached to your collarbones. Underneath that is the larger bony part of the breastbone that's attached to your ribs. And underneath that, there's the cartilaginous part called the xiphisternum or the xiphoid cartilage or the xiphoid process. That cartilaginous part should be lifted up and over. Personally, I don't know if anyone else likes this. I quite like to press my fingers gently into it and feel it moving up and over. Once you get your position right, you stretch your arms over your head as well, if you can, if you're comfortable to, with your legs together or feet together, depending on which meets first. Light tone in the tummy. Breath through the nose. And breathing into it. The more you stretch, the more you should feel that blanket pressing into you and causing more of a fulcrum or a tipping point for the chest to stretch over. Great. Well done, everyone. I think it's a lovely pose. Bring your arms forwards, bend your legs, and roll off the lift to one side, putting the lift to the side, turning to face the midline of the room, and coming into Adho Mukha Svanasana, the downward facing dog. We're going to start with the toes tucked under so we can stretch the plantar fascia a little bit. We're going to then check that the hands are equidistant from the front and the sides of the mat, and that the middle fingers face forwards towards the very front of the mat, so you've got room to come into the pose. And then lifting up when you're ready. And of course, it would be pointless checking that your hands were equidistant from the front of the mat if you didn't do the same for your feet, to check that they too are equidistant. That is to say, the left foot is the same distance from the side of the mat as the right foot. And then whatever works, moving your pelvis side to side, stretching one heel and then the other, bending the knees. But over time, these movements are serving a general stretch up and through, all the way through the armpits, to the inner groins, inner armpits, inner groins, outer armpits, outer groins. You have to really concentrate because attention likes to drift, doesn't it? Stretch up through the center of the armpits, through to the top of the front thighs. Well done, everyone. Coming down calmly to a regular kneeling position, quite probably putting a block between the heels and buttocks or a blanket, so that if your knees are tight, you've got support. If your ankles are tight, you can put a rolled up blanket, which is conveniently pre-rolled for you underneath your front ankles. And then just catching a few deep breaths. So one hand on top of the other. This is, if you've got your right hand on top of your left, that's called Bhairava. And if you've got your left hand on top of your right, that's called Bhairavi. And you might find yourself wanting to roll a little on your shins. Breath easy and natural. Jaw soft, eyes soft. And really, it is all about the breath. Okay, releasing out of the Vajrasana. And we're going to fold one end of our mat, the end nearest the outer walls, where you can currently hear bin men going past. So a third of the mat you want to fold near the outer walls. So if you're that side, it's that one. If you're that side, it's that. Like that. Now you might also definitely want a belt. You might also want a block. If you used a block before, then you're going to use it again. If you're sitting on a block, we're going to tip one side back, the side furthest away from me. So I'll just demo that briefly. So it's going to be just a little tipped back so that in a minute, in a moment, when we bring our leg back, there's space for it. All right, so tipping the block, if you're on a block. You don't have to be on a block, but it's really useful if your back is collapsed like this. The pose will be pretty much useless to you until you get your back upright. So that's what the block's for. And then as described, you bring one leg back, whether you're sitting on a block or not. And the foot, usually for most people, comes into the opposite thigh, somewhere along the opposite thigh, but sometimes it can come to the top of its own thigh. And we just spend a moment with our fingers on the floor, turning the chest towards the outstretched leg. And breathing through our noses if we can. Softening through the breath. Meditating. Which just means letting yourself become absorbed in not the concept of interdependence, but the direct experience of it. And reality is a field of interdependence, so you don't have to reach out for it. You've got to uncover it by dropping the veils of constant chatter, which obscure the mind from the way things are. We're going to take the strap around the foot. That is, for most of us, I guess one or two people might have very, very short legs and very, very long arms, and so that would make the belt redundant. But what we don't want to do is close the spine. We want to keep it open. As this is not the modern postural yoga pose Janu Shirshasana, but instead the Hatha practice of Mahabandha. So Mahabandha involves squeezing the upper and lower kundalinis into the central point of the central channel. In other words, we bring our chin and chest down. That's called squeezing the upper kundalinis, reference to energy. And then similarly with the lower, we squeeze that upwards by drawing the belly in and up. And that just pulls or nudges the lower kundalini via the pelvic floor. And then we imagine that what we're doing with these two actions is pushing awareness from the top and the bottom to the heart, to the middle. And this is really how Hatha-yoga works. It physicalizes, it makes physical movements to make energetic directional changes, which in earlier traditions are just visualized. It's one way in which Hatha-yoga is original. It does take concentration, and it does take intention. Okay, slow and easy, release the Mahabandha on that side, and we'll do it on the other side too. So if you're on a block, once you stretch out your legs, tilt the block the other way to accommodate the other foot coming back. So remember, if you're on a block, just tilt it back so that your leg can come back. It's got the space to come into. Again, the heel probably goes to the opposite thigh, but it can go to the top of its own thigh. In some cases, fingertips on the floor, lifting and turning and breathing. Again, once you've spent a bit of time loosening your back knee, which is very, very important, the inside of it loosens. It takes time and it takes meditation. And when you feel ready to take the strap, then do. Keep concentrating on the back knee, the inside of the back knee. Softening, softening, softening. Again, one could, if you had very, very long arms, very long torso, very short legs, potentially still keep the spine open and hold the foot, so that's fine for those with that kind of anatomy. And then we're going to squeeze the upper kundalini by lifting the chest and bringing the chin down. And we're going to nudge the lower kundalini by drawing the belly in. And we're going to imagine that we can squeeze the energies from both of these areas towards the heart center. Words such as bhavayet, chintayet, smartayet are used to describe that the yogi is making it happen. They're creating it, they're visualizing it, thinking about it, they're remembering it. These are the third person optative case, which means he or she or they are meditating on it, are thinking about it, are remembering it, are making it happen. Bhavayet. Okay, nice and easy. Releasing. Coming out of a pose. Fully folding your mat just for a moment. Sitting in any comfortable seated position, facing towards the front. I'm going to go for Siddhasana, but you can go for Virasana, Vajrasana, Padmasana, whatever. Siddhasana is where I tend to like sitting on a cork block for this. The heels are lined up with each other and with the midline of the body. You can sit in any comfortable seated position if this isn't comfortable for you. And the chest is lifted. And we're just going to send a cleansing bija mantra through the central channel. This is called mantrochara. Mantrochara is a compound of the words mantra plus uchara. And it intimates pushing this mantra up through the central channel and cleansing it. So from the pelvic floor all the way through, up out of the crown of the head, with a particular focus on making it very nasally sounding as you get to the forehead center to penetrate through those particularly pernicious blockages between the forehead and the crown. So that bija mantra is going to be Om. Let's take a deep breath in. Om. then deep breaths to relax after that. A very clear sense of being centered, and we're going to take that awareness of that space that we've cleared into our Shavasana. So coming into your Shavasana posture, when you're ready, obviously you're opening up the mat, staying with that sense of the vacuity in the central channel. And going to keep it relatively short so that everyone's on time. And even if you've only got a minute, then do it for at least a minute. Huh? Once you're laying down, palms facing up, then as instructed in the Haṭha-yoga Shastra, we'll let our attention rest in the vacuity of the central channel, this space within the central channel. We find this in this kind of practice in the Haṭha-yoga Shastra. We find even earlier these kind of practices in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. And of course, this focus on emptiness is adopted from much earlier Buddhist schools, the Madhyamaka school. So focusing on the emptiness in the central channel, the vacuity, the space. Much as neither of us want me to say what I'm going to say, so that this class is on time, because I know an early morning class is important for it to be on time. We will now move our fingers and toes and take little stretches. Never get out of corpse pose fast. Always come out slow. So we're going to bend our legs, place the feet on the floor, scoot the buttocks under, take a deep breath to rest the lower back. And then we're going to roll onto our side, facing away from the shrine side of the room. And then we're going to roll again towards the shrine side of the room. Come up slow when you feel ready. Don't rush it. And just very briefly, but with sincerity, bring your hands together to your heart center. And if you agree with these following words, say Om at the end, which means I agree. May any benefit that we've gained in our acting in this way go to the alleviation of the suffering, not just of ourselves, but of all beings. Om. Thanks so much for your time, Roomers and Zoomers, and any Pumas that might have come to the class. I don't think there were any Pumas. Thank you so much, guys. So much love to you. Great to see you. See you real soon. Love ya.